should warn you. We'll start the recording with a warning because I know you have a large studio audience. I'm since I'm at work, my machine that I'm playing on here is a Mac, which I am totally Mac illiterate. Normally, I have a window on one side that's the stream and a window on the other side that's Roll D20, but I'll be tabbing back and forth between them. So when I tab into Roll D20, I won't see you necessarily.
I was kind of hoping we'd get the Roll20 cameras to work because they're just placed on the same screen.
Right.
We lose some of the recording unless I run some other software on the side. But I was thinking it would be a good time to test it, but we'll play with that later. I like to have the face-to-face time also as part of the social experience, but I'm not over here doing tricks. So if you're tabbed out, you're not going to miss much. You can see all the disorganized piles on my shelf back here. So I put it on a world map, and I think as I shift and ping, does it center your map to a certain view?
Yes.
Okay. What I've done here, I actually I started with the idea that we identified Cotton Hill and the Tomb of the Iron Thorns. We started your game in the Tomb of the Iron Thorns, and we named Cotton Hill as the town that you'd come from. I then took a spreadsheet and I made just a grid of squares that was 40 by 30. I auto-populated it with about 1 out of 12. It ended up being, out of 1,200 squares, about 79 locations. And then I took some random lists and randomized and distributed 79 spots over the grid. I used some software called Campaign Cartographer that I bought a few years ago, and I never really learned to use, but it's like CAD for mapping, for doing like fantasy maps. And, it's really a robust piece of software. I don't know how to use very well yet.
It's a good-looking map.
And so the end result is I've got about 79, I think, spread across this map. In Roll20, or in Campaign Cartographer, I took one version that has like a shitload of locations kind of peppered around. And then I did one version that has just the places that we've been to, Tomb of the Iron Thrones, and we talked about Cotton Hill. I put in a few other places that you necessarily know about. A nearby big town, you'll see a town off on the top, kind of to the west, called Frexelsport Collective. If you follow the road.
Oh, yep.
There's a little dwarven town called Rockhold.
Yep.
I think
I know there's dwarves there.
Way off to the south, there's the Broken Maws, big jagged peak that kind of stands over the horizon, even where you are in the valley. And then way off on the east is a bridge over a large, I'm thinking like the Mississippi River. And there's a big bridge crossing that river called the Span. If you look further around the map, there's a few things that I've let you see. There's a big port town, a couple other trading towns. I haven't named them yet. I think as we play, we might decide what some of these are called, or I could arbitrarily name them. And you'll see how the map has, it's colorful in the places you revealed, and everything else is grayscale.
Okay.
What I've done is I've actually, in Photoshop, I've got two maps. One is the full-colored map that has all the details. An example would be you have a grayscale copy. I'm going to shift ping to draw your attention. This Marble Flats Quarry. You know it's out there somewhere. You don't necessarily know exactly where it is. But when you actually go there and visit, or otherwise like know for sure, somebody puts it on your map, you know exactly where it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to erase the grayscale map, and you might learn more details about that area.
I see.
Alternatively, if you look right at
the echo now. Sorry.
Oh, let's see here. I'm going to turn my speakers down a little bit. Can you talk a little bit?
Hello. I'm sorry.
I'm going to plug in my headphones. That might help alleviate it.
I still see myself on the Roll D20, which is pleasant. Hello? I don't have an echo anymore. If you're talking, I also don't hear you, though. I only hear Sound of my own heartbeat. Can you hear me? Hello?
Testing, testing.
I hear you now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. This should get rid of the echo. I was using the speaker or the microphone on my camera, and I think it picks up some background noise depending on where I sit.
Got it.
So the way this game can be run and what I'm trying to do with it is what they call a hex crawler or a sandbox game.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Cotton Hill, the kind of main city there that we're about to return to, right next to it, there's a hex with the label 3723, and it's grayed out.
Uh-huh.
If you go through and spend some time kind of exploring that hex, looking for secrets, we'll delete the gray, the fog of war, basically, and you'll gain those hexes. It'll give us kind of a track of where you've been, what you've seen, things you've done.
Got it.
Most of the hexes don't have anything behind them, and so to make it kind of a less time-consuming ordeal, one of my thoughts is when you go into a hex and explore it, we would just assume it takes about a day per hex. And if it's a forest or hilly or something, it's slow. It's like 2 days. And we would do a number of quick random encounter rolls. And as long as you get through with no random encounter, we just reveal it. You don't have to spend a lot of time.
Got it.
If you end up going to a hex where I know from my map that there is something there, in that case, we would probably do a skill check to see if you can discover it kind of before it discovers you, sort of thing.
Got it.
Almost like rolling initiative to see who gets to drop on who. If you, through the game, learn the location of things, I would go ahead and reveal them as well. That way we don't turn into a big game where you're just slugging through a map. And one of the drawbacks of this method that I'm thinking of is it does take me a little bit of time to actually reveal the color, the way I have it set up now. And so I can't kind of in real time on Roll20 clear up the fog of war. So this might not be the best solution, but it's kind of what I've come up for now. I think it has a good look to it. I just don't know if it's practical. But I kind of like the idea of this. And if Jessica, for instance, wanted to join us in this game, what I might recommend we do instead of staying with Scarlet Heroes is going over to Godbound, where it's written by the same author. It's generally the same idea where you're stronger than the other people around you. But it's made to play with 2 players a little bit more nicely. And part of why you're so great is you would gain, you could basically play the same character, but you would also add you'd have some divine magic. Your spellcrafting would come from being like, you'd have divine words. I'll do an elevator pitch if we're interested in doing that later.
And is your magic divine magic because you are a god, or because you're?
There's a setting written for the game that's kind of like post Earth. The real, like, the Judeo-Christian God had some sort of cataclysmic event where he split all of his power that is unified under the one true God, gets destroyed. Heaven goes to war with itself, breaks apart, like magic falls down into the earth. The earth is torn asunder by earthquakes and tectonic plates shifting, and you're left with a lot of things that are clearly reminiscent of Earth culture, post-apocalyptic, and now there's people running around the world that have a portion of God's true power. And so if you and the way they manifest, they're usually like children who in adolescence start manifesting these powers. And so you look at somebody who's a demigod like Thor. No, Thor's a god. Hercules, right? The son of a god. He would have the divine words of like strength and endurance, probably. Um, Somebody who's really clever might have wit and logos, like to be able to speak, to be a dazzling rhetorical person. So we'd look at kind of a couple in the book. If we get to that point, the book would give you some words, and you could very easily recreate yourself, your character. I think out of that column could have sorcery, magic, and stuff like that. Anyway, that game is a little bit different though, because you also, as you're going around and you start leveling up, you start kind of building a cadre of followers that you can send out to do your work. Like it's a little bit different in that sense. Alternatively, we could just bring Jessica directly into this game, or we could put a pin in this and go straight back to Monster of the Week. But I'm excited about what I'm doing here in the map. I've come up with some ideas that I think are worth exploring. I do want to ask real quick. I've written a few questions I just wanted to go over with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And these are just kind of first impression, whatever you think in response, and we can always change how we look at it later. But the first question, I wonder if it's better to just share this document with you. Let me do that. If I share, you'll be able to open it.
Are you sharing it with me in Roll D20 or
give you a link in Roll20, and
okay.
it's going to let you just open this document. If you just click that link, it should open a Google Drives, a Word document, basically. And so question 1, how do you learn about the hooks for new adventures? So how does Colin actually learn about things? And I've got some suggestions there, but it can be whatever you think. My suggestions were research, gossip, dreams, just hearing about people in need, people with gold who are in need.
Well, probably with this character, probably not the last one. Probably gossip, people in need.
I know you're kind of your focus is restoring the balance. You see an imbalance happening. I've actually named this campaign Precarious Balance. So as you hear gossip about something that's kind of out of whack, or people are in need because like there's unnatural events going on,
right?
That's what gets your attention. It's not that you're actively doing research. It's not that you have any sort of prophetic dreams or anything like that, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, active research may be a thing that happens, but not prophetic dreams.
And then do you want, and this is for the player, do you want to establish a hub and quest from there? Or do you want the adventures to kind of take you across the map?
I think it's more fun to have it take me across the map and kind of explore.
Very good. And so one thing like that'll tell me is right now I've already come up with some ideas for, oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. The companion that you've got.
Oh, I don't remember her name either.
Anna Lee, I think. I've got her here. Yeah, Anna Lee. I've already come up with some ideas of where she's from and what she's doing, and she won't necessarily be there all the time, but I've come up with a couple of characters that might be able to go with you around the map, and they've got reasons to not be stuck to one area.
Sure.
Or that they could be. Do you want to fight things that are smart, that are tough, that are mystical, mundane? Do you like bad guys are just evil and you have to destroy them, or something that's like relatable and you kind of get a sense of, well, maybe they have a point? What sort of challenges are most compelling?
I think smart is more interesting than not. I like relatable.
I'm thinking of like you don't want to just go up against big dumb ogres and destroy them. You like to have things that think they're smart and you're going to outclass them, brain against brain type thing.
I think so. I mean, I think a mix of some big dumb ogres could be fun too. But I think for like, if you're talking more about like the big bads,
yeah,
I think it's more fun to have something that's smart and relatable. Maybe still evil, but maybe that's the part that makes the relatable nature troubling.
I like the idea that villains almost never think they're the bad guy. They just think everybody else is too stupid to realize what they're doing or why they're doing it.
Right.
Thanos was a great example.
It seems like the villain in the new Godzilla movie is going to be like that, which I'm not a huge Godzilla fan, but the trailers to that new movie look really, really good.
I don't know if I've seen them.
It looks really, really good.
Okay. Check that out. I can't even think of a time that Godzilla's had a strong villain. Like, I mean, it's usually just like Mothra, another monster.
Well, I'm not a huge Godzilla fan, but you can watch the trailer and see what you think. But it seems like what they're setting up is that I can't think of the actress's name. I've seen her in things. But there's basically Godzilla and Mothra and Rodan and all of those big monsters. They call them the Titans. And there's this woman who feels like the Titans were the Earth's original masters, Earth's original rulers, and that they're Earth's failsafe. And when things get out of balance and get out of whack, you release the Titans to basically scorch Earth everything.
Like Captain Planet had a bad day, and here's Godzilla.
Right. And so this woman is saying mankind is abusing the world and is a virus and is out of hand, and we need to release the Titans to restore the balance and basically just trash most of mankind, and whoever survives rebuilds.
But without plastic bags, like they'll just basically take technology down.
Right.
That's interesting. I think Tolkien was actually writing in response to the mechanization and industry of Germany, and I mean, that's the cool thread. I hadn't seen the trailer for Godzilla going there. And so I'm thinking like for the big bad there, I used to design puzzles, right, as part of a GM experience. And then I'd sit there and just wonder why the players couldn't guess the answer in my head. It was always a frustrating clusterfuck for everybody involved.
Right.
So I'm not thinking of designing opponents where you have to specifically outwit them in a way that I'm prescribing, but rather I'll come up with kind of complex plots that they're working on, and then find ways to expose you to those and let you start unraveling them and have them scramble and catch up. But it won't just be you sit there and punch each other in the face. They'll try and come at you through the people you care about or through trying to distract you. And while they're doing that, I'll, as a GM, I'll make it part of my role to be clear with the player. Like you're getting called, you're getting split between these two decisions. Like it's orchestrated. Not ever to like, haha, I outsmarted the player, but just to part of like, we'll have that dialogue about like how columns getting pulled this way and that way.
Yeah.
Very good. And not necessarily going for mystical versus mundane, just kind of whatever they're doing. There's probably something mystical because they're attacking the balance of the world. But
yeah.
And I think we can assume that like it's going to be something that's intentionally open to the chamber of the Thorn King and things like that, the Shrike King. And then what kind of difference will Column make in this world?
Man, I don't know. That's a tough question.
And we can come back around to it. You can think about this in the future, but I think as you think about your goals, your instincts, and beliefs, like we maybe don't even have a sense of his legacy yet.
Right.
But
yeah,
ponder on that one for a while. We play.
I think so. Yeah.
And then what would be exciting in this campaign? I think we agreed that exploration and world building would be.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of a consistent story arc. It doesn't have to be sort of the touchstone of everything that happens. Like it could be almost like the season of a sci-fi or fantasy television show where there's like an overarching season storyline and then there's sort of meanderings about as the episodes happen, but it keeps circling back to the main storyline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's kind of how I prefer. Anytime there's a story arc, I prefer that. Not that there's red herrings, but that you're not so
You
take
can get
yourself so
breaks from it.
seriously that you can. Yeah, and there's no penalty for just following a butterfly because it's interesting.
Right.
Um, do you think things that are like battles, and by battle I mean like large scale conflict that you're in the periphery of, or even driving, or is it more focused on Callum and his actions, like his immediate area?
I've never done a campaign where there's more large scale battle happening. So I'm up for trying it. I can't say like, oh yeah, I've done that before and I love it. But
So one thing this game system, this author does really well for these sort of sandbox games. Um, as we play a little bit more, we can flesh out like here are the different like powerful factions operating in the world, and then you actually prescribe for them like ratings of like their abilities and powers, specific resources they have in the world, and about every month of game time, I'll roll to have them each, and we'll have each one will have its own agenda, and it's maybe stuff that you won't explicitly know, but about every month that passes in the fiction, they will try and pursue their own goals, and their opponents will try and block them and pursue their own goals. They'll start eventually, and it's all dice based. It's not my decisions. I'll pit them against each other and roll some dice, and the game will tell me how things are resolving. And then through gameplay, you'll hear rumors. You'll see armies on the march. You'll know, if you decide to ally yourself with one side, they'll tell you like, oh, it would help us if you go and destroy this bridge, or if you go kidnap this prince, or like whatever you have to do.
and I say,
Um,
fuck that bridge.
there's
I
a
probably
game
wouldn't say
called
that. That'd be rude and mean.
there's a game called Stars Without Number, written by the same guy. It's a space opera version of this, and the author, one of the two authors of Dungeon World, runs Stars Without Number, and he actually broadcasts when he does what they call the GM turn, when he does like the faction turn. He broadcasts that, and like fans of the show, because they play it on YouTube and Twitch, fans of the show can tune in and kind of see the meat and bones of the factions going at each other, and then tune into the next time they play the game and see how he kind of does like news updates or the background gossip, how it ties in. Um, it's really a cool system. I haven't done it myself to any detail yet, but it would be fun to play with. So that would enable us to do battles where instead of having you get lost in the crowd or having to fight 20,000 people yourself, you can be given like the very specific objectives that may help a side that you're sympathetic to or oppose a side that you have antipathy towards.
We all know though that I could take on 20,000 people for sure.
you almost bid it to 6 ghosts, 6 zombies, but
Hey,
skeletons.
that's true.
And then finally, do you want a bunch of intrigue where there's like, I think we've talked about this before a little bit, but we're not really, I think, into the Game of Thrones level of machinations. Should the NPCs be trying to pull you into different things, or do you just want to kind of have some options put in front of you and you push wherever you find interesting?
I think the latter.
Okay. So there's no people might be reacting to you, but you don't want those to be hooks in Callum to try and draw him away. Like Anna Lee won't come up with a bunch of distracting shit to try and make you do, but you might do something that she agrees to come along with if
I
you
think
were to
so.
travel with her.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Well, I think we come back to let me get this guy open here. I've bought some software that I can make towns and things. I just haven't gotten good with it yet. And did you shift over to a new map?
Sorry, I was looking at your lovely face again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that is a horrible resolution. What's going on there?
I don't have a new map. I just have a
Here it
black
is.
screen at the moment.
Oh, it's just taking a moment to load, I think. And the resolution came in for me. Yeah, I've set you over. So you're going to go to the town of Cotton Hill. This is, we had mentioned that one large town kind of surrounded by a number of small farming communities. Cotton Hill is where you had met with the father of Wilhelm and what was his name? Oh, he's dead. That's why. Wilhelm and the other guy. I don't have his name right in front of me.
It's mean of me not to remember his name for his father.
You had killed the poor kid, or allowed him to run in harm's way. Anyway, you were going to be going back to Cotton Hill. You'd even mentioned you looted a sword from the Shrike King, and you mentioned you'd give it to him. You've had a pretty quick route through the tomb, so you could make it back either the night that you killed the Shrike King, or by early afternoon the next day. Would you have stayed the night after clearing the tomb?
I think so. I would have stayed the night to sort of get some rest and recuperation, maybe get a sense of Annalie, and then and see if she's headed back to the town with me, and then would have gotten started the next morning.
Good. Let me pull her up here. So I think we'll just kind of pick it up then. There in.
I still don't have a map. I still have a black screen.
I'm not sure what's going on here. Let me. Oh, we don't need it just yet. Let it load in the background. We'll be in the tomb. You've cleared out the tomb. You've found every room you've gone into where you didn't specifically kill the skeletal remains that were there. They all died when the Shrike King died.
Okay.
You've gone in.
That's cool.
You found that bloody altar that you kind of passed by. You've looted all the silver and everything. You've kind of gotten everything gathered up at the entrance to go. There were no survivors other than Annalie. The place has kind of a creepy vibe on it. The stench of death is still deep in there. There was one room where there was a huge pile of corpses. You'd bypass the room. There were actually 8 enemies in there. They all died. But as you go back and check that room out, yeah, it's just a huge charnel house full of corpses and rot and decay. So you don't sleep well that night. And I think maybe Annalie is tossing and turning, clearly not sleeping well herself. Do you have a fire? Do you have your own magical light? What do you have?
We have a fire.
Okay. Probably in that main first room has a big vaulted ceiling, and there was big pillars holding it up, and you'd collapse one of the pillars and trap some skeletons. Maybe that's a good place to have the fire. She's tossing and turning, and after maybe an hour of fitful attempting to sleep, she just kind of whispers out harshly, "I can't sleep. Are you awake?"
I am. What's up?
I just can't rest in here. I feel, I don't know, it's guilt. You did a great thing. You did a good thing. You ended this. I should never have been captured. I should never have. Perhaps those young men wouldn't have sacrificed themselves. I don't know.
I don't think you can blame yourself, though. This is an awful place. Not a weakness that you were set upon here.
She fishes through her pack, and I think you had given her some food at some point because she was given just meager whatever they could cough up for. And you see that she's actually been hoarding some of the food that you had given her. So she pulls out a little piece of kind of stale crust of bread and some cheese and starts nibbling on it. And she says, "I didn't ask. Perhaps I didn't want to know. But what brought you out here to the tomb? How did you find us?"
Well, I mean, I have my home has its own problems. I've been trying to solve them for a long time. That's why I'm away from home. And as I was out and about and on my travels to try to make life better for my friends and my family and the people there, I heard that there was strange things happening here. That people were disappearing. That there was a darkness, and so I came to see what it was. There's nothing special about me or why I'm here. Just wanted to make sure that things were right.
I laid for over a week, chained to that bed, waiting for the king to take me. He thought I'd be his bride. I hoped for one more chance to put him down. I couldn't believe it when you came through that door. And the way that you dispatched those guards, those are incredible monsters, and the way that you and Wilhelm and his brother, whose name I can't remember, the way that you put them down was incredible.
Yeah, look, we wouldn't have made it out of the situation, and I guess I was going to say out of this place, but we're still in this place, right?
God, yes.
We wouldn't have made it through the day without your help. So, don't forget about that.
I suppose you're right. What does the dawn bring? What is your plan?
Well, we have to go back to Cotton Hill and give word of what happened here. Let the brother's family know that they're gone, but that they died an honorable death, and that without them, this evil would still be here, and you and I wouldn't be telling the tale. I don't think we need to tell their family what happened to them, but just that they fought to the end and were by our side. I want to give this sword to the family so they have something to, just some sort of heirloom to tell their son's story, have a little heroism for the future generations to look back and know that these two brothers were heroes. From there, I don't know. After that, I don't know.
I shall go back with you to Cotton Hill, if that's okay with you. From there, I can get transportation home for now.
Where's home? What's next for you?
I don't know where my path will take me next. I know I don't look at these princessly rags, but I'm a member of an aesthetic order, and we always have tasks to keep us in trouble. Sorry, we always have tasks to keep us focused on opposing the troubles of the world. I'll return home and I'll report that the Shrike King has been put to rest, and I'll begin my training anew until they find a new job for me.
So you answered part of the question. You didn't answer where home is.
It's
and you don't have to. If you don't want to, that's fine. You don't have to.
She starts to kind of half-ass an answer, and you get the sense that like she's coming up with a polite way to say that. And when you say you don't have to, say, oh, it's off in the hills. She waves vaguely, just toward the horizon. You can tell she's grateful that you're not pressing her for information. I think you can tell that she was calculating: do I lie? Do I just be ambiguous and refuse? So you feel that little sense of relief. Can you roll 2d100 for me real quick?
Separately?
I need to see the 2 separate die rolls, yeah. Okay. And then one more.
That's funny.
We'll be okay.
I hope it's 2 separate tables.
Yeah, it is.
That's funny.
Very cool. Your kindness and your thought of the boys, their family, the way their family will choose to remember them and pass on the story. That is how the small folk can stand up against things like the Shrike King, by keeping stories alive of bravery, of rising up against the evil forces. I think it is good that you do that. I thank you, Callum. You are an inspiration to me. We have a long walk ahead of us tomorrow. Thank you for indulging me.
Of course. I mean, are you going to be okay in here? I know that I guess I should have been more considerate before picking our camp spot. This place hasn't been kind to you.
I wouldn't turn down the roof over my head as long as I'm not sleeping in that damnable bed. I'm fine. But thank you for asking. Now that she just kind of lets the conversation die, unless you have questions for her, you're gonna press her for any information.
I mean, if there's anything she'll tell me about her order, I'm curious. I'm gonna have a light step with it. I'm not gonna like push, but
I think as you kind of in this conversation, it carries on for a little bit longer, and you avoid probing deeply, but you show a little interest. I think she avoids it now, but maybe on the walk in the morning, she finally gets to sleep. You get to sleep as well. You wake up rested. Do you do your spell preparation in front of her?
Mm-hmm.
She looks on quizzically, but she doesn't interrupt. And you get the sense that she clearly doesn't know what you're doing, but she has some discipline. She mentions that she comes from a religious order, an ascetic order. So you figure, I think that's just enough from the books you've read. Like, she's some sort of monastic creature or person, and is used to, like, don't interrupt people while they're doing things that take focus.
Right.
So maybe I think on the walk home, she wants to hang on to her secrets. She's compelled to hang on to her secrets, but maybe a charisma check plus. You took your carpenter's apprentice up to 3, but last time we talked about whether maybe you in stone want to put that point into something like small town hero, or maybe when you hit 3rd level you'd want to do that.
I think I'll do it at 3rd level. I would feel weird to do it. It would feel opportunistic to do it right before this roll.
And it wouldn't necessarily, because quick study might also work on this roll. You're kind of studying the nuances of her conversation and things and trying to figure out. But as you're all walking back, it's going to be 18 miles. Unless you're running it, it's going to take a good 4 or 5 hours to get back to Cotton Hill.
I'm not a guy who's going to run 18 miles. Not with my 11 constitution.
Man, I did couch to 5K a while back, a couple years ago when Jessica and I were first dating. I was doing it.
That sounds awful.
I actually got to where I was running like a 3 mile every other day and liking it. Like, I've never liked running before. I've always hated running. It got too hot and I quit doing it, and now I couldn't do it again. I'd have to go through the program. But it was actually, Andrew Fish had never felt a runner's high, but at 38, holy shit, I'd get that little burst.
So,
but yeah,
charisma roll.
So I'm thinking charisma, and that's a 0 modifier. Maybe quick study, and this is just the conversations. Like while you're talking, she's kind of asking the sort of non-probing questions. She's dancing around the thing the same way you are, and there's maybe a little information to trade or a little motivation to do like a you answer a question for me, I answer a question for you type thing.
Sure.
If you want to push it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just I don't have anything really to hide, or at least it's not in my nature to try to hide things. Yeah.
So yeah, do a 2d6 plus 3 for quick study.
Oh, 2d6.
0 for charisma.
Hopefully this is right. No, that's a d20 that just rolled, isn't it? Yeah, that was a d20. That was not 2d6. Hang on one second.
Oh, and if we drop Callum onto the world, you might have a skill. Oh, I didn't do a skill thing for you. I need to do that.
There's
2, 6, oh, 14. Yeah, you did it right. So I was thinking difficulty like maybe 11, and so yeah, she starts opening up to you. So how do we get into the questions? As you're walking, she says that book you were consulting. What is that? Is that a religious text? Is that the traditions of your people?
No and no. And I think we talked last time about how it's not even really writing in the books. It's all almost like sacred geometry kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not religion per se, although I guess what is religion after all? Gosh, we've got 18 miles to go, but I don't think we want to get into that type of a discussion necessarily. That would take at least 14 of the 18 miles, probably.
She looks at you and she says, I don't see the struggle. I mean, religion is the training we undertake to build ourselves better, to take that which we are given and turn it into a weapon for the greater good. I mean, that
can't be a definition for religion, can it? Because I mean that by that definition, we take what we're given and say it one more time. We take what we're given and we study it for the greater good to make it a weapon. Is that because that could be a lot of things that are not religion? I could be a house builder and take what I'm given and learn and be good at it for the greater good. That doesn't.
Building a house is a sacred act. You know, if you're.
It does, but it doesn't mean that's a religion. The act is not the same as the philosophy. Is it? I
never thought of religion as a philosophy. I guess philosophy, like a state of ideals. And I think as you're kind of talking to her, she has a fairly naive. You can tell that she's been heavily indoctrinated. I think that's kind of the first thing you pick up from this thing. She's been led, and I'm kind of there's a cult down here. Or it's a nationwide cult called Ekankar, and they just believe like you do. You do whatever you're good at as well as you can. Like if you're a hammer, you just hammer things really well. Like that's living up to your purpose. And you get a sense of like a very fatalistic sort of idea from her that we're put into this world, called upon to do a task, and doing that well is just religious duty. And it's never been something she's ever been taught to really contemplate or question. And so she's not really concerned. She doesn't find your questions to be like a challenge to her beliefs, but she doesn't know how to respond to them. You think she's not well educated. She's not dumb, but she's not well read or anything.
And I have a danger of getting into the weeds on any discussion.
Yeah.
So.
I think she's kind of playful with it, and I'm picturing you watched Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm. I've watched some of it. I've read more of it than I've watched. I watched some.
So you've read, you know, when Jon Snow and Ygritte are walking around and he doesn't know some very basic thing about survival in the frozen wastelands, she keeps saying, "You know nothing," even though like she's not intelligent or educated, right?
Right.
You get that sense of like, she thinks you're making things too complicated. It's kind of cute, but she definitely feels like she's got a lot to teach you, and
Sure.
doesn't realize that she's not keeping up with a different train of thinking that's valid in its own way.
And from my aspect, she asked me about my book specifically, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I'm getting way off task and
Nice.
just getting to the weeds of like, what is religion and what does religion mean, and acts versus thoughts, and until she brings me back to what she wanted to know without trying to be evasive, I'm not like.
And maybe there's a few periods of her like trying to bring it around, and you keep kind of getting off, kind of hitting a tangent and running down. And then she just kind of gets quiet, and she's sitting there, and maybe she's thinking about it. We watch as you both kind of trudge silently across the hill. Maybe she finds some berries and picks them and shares them. Then she looks at the book again, and she thinks of another way. She says, some of the masters, they have tumblers. And she kind of starts shaping, and she describes, have you ever seen in like Tibet, they might have a big stone tumbler that you turn.
Mhm.
They turn these, and they consult them for the wisdom of the earth. Is it like that? They say if
Maybe.
they listen very hard, they can hear the complaints from the very bones, from the foundations below us. They can hear.
Oh no, it's nothing like that. So in my experience, there's a logic to the world. There's a order to things.
Yes, in order. She
There's
keys in on them.
a way that nature and fact work together to I suppose create maximum efficiency. And if you can learn the structure of that efficiency, you can learn sort of the shape that those kind of movements and those kinds of energies take. Then sometimes you can move them yourself. You can just use your intellect. You can use your power of understanding of the world to move things the right way, to move things back the way they should be. That's all it is. I'm not listening to any voices or waiting for any higher power. It's just I've sort of gained an understanding of how the physical world works, and if I need to, I can manipulate it to make things go back to the way they should be.
She kind of cocks her head to you, and she scoops up a pebble, and she kind of holds up in the palm of her hand, and she kind of sticks her hands here. She does that, and the pebble just launches off her palm. She does like a little telekinetic projection and just shoots the pebble. And just like that, just demonstrates to her, it's like doing a parlor trick, like pulling a quarter from behind the ear.
But it was clearly some sort of a spell that she cast, or some sort of telekinesis or something. It wasn't like a sleight of hand thing.
Right. It wasn't sleight of hand. I think you probably also, maybe you look at it and you see, to her, it's a pretty minor act of like focusing her will in a certain way, and like her key does it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To you, there's probably like she's actually committing a spell, like a cantrip, nothing major,
Mm-hmm.
but she's actually weaving a spell. Like you probably see it and like, oh yeah, that makes sense from your lens, whereas to her it's a completely different lens. But she has like,
I mean, I think that's exactly like that. I think with some study, you could do great things.
Oh, I hope so. The masters, they say that not enough people carry the mantle. Too many never seek the understanding, and that is what we must do. Is we must understand the world the way it is, the way it should be, and help take it from here to there. There's a
That
heavy
sounds
burden.
good to me. That's right. That sounds right. I mean, we do what we can, right? I think it's to say it's a heavy burden is to think that we could actually, any one of us could make a difference, right? I mean, it's sometimes it feels like sand running through your fingers, um, but we do little acts here and there, and um, correct things where we can, right?
She says, 9 generations ago, the Shrike King took the young from all the lands around here, twisted them, killed them, stuck them on his iron spikes, and rose up an army of undead. And the best they could do at that time was seal him below the hills. Nobody could stop him. And yet I saw yesterday you and your strange book and your green energies that float around you when you're angry. You put an end to him when the expiation, and that's the first time she uses the word expiation. I'll put it in chat real quick. You have accomplished what the expiation could not 9 generations ago, and what I had slim hope, strong desire, but slim hope of doing myself. I think one person can make a difference if they're focused and if they have the will to do so. And she's looking at you, and there's maybe almost like we're at the cusp of a point where she's very religious and kind of looks to masters to teach her things. And she's looking at you in the sense like you think you could probably, I don't know if you want to call it exploit it. Like she knows that you know things, or she sees you as this almost messianic character. Whether she's going to try and recruit you or follow you, like you can kind of you're at a cusp here where Callum has an understanding. Like she's looking at you like almost mystified by your presence.
Well, I think everyone can make a difference, of course. I mean, all of us make a difference. I guess I was just saying sometimes it doesn't feel that way. But one thing to just remember, and maybe just tell yourself this. I didn't do anything in this tomb, in this prison. We did. We all did. So who knows what any one of us can do.
You kind of see her swell with pride as she looks back. And I'd have to go back and rewatch it. To my memory, you killed the Shrike King before he could even get off his throne. Like
Yeah.
there was a whole nasty thing where if you got into melee with him, it was going to be he was going to start exuding a red dust that would like poison you. It was about to get really ugly. You just dropped him with your magic missile. And so yeah, but she kind of hears what you're saying, like, yes, I played a role in that too. Perhaps you're right. Some of us maybe can carry more of a burden. The Shrike King, we put him to rest. He stole the wills of hundreds of thousands and would have continued to do so. And because of because of our deeds, because of Wilhelm and Jonas, I'm gonna call him Jonas. He will never He will never prey upon another.
Isn't it something like Ulfric or something like that?
Yeah, it was something like
Very German.
Yeah. I archived that map, and I just don't want to go through the process of disarchiving it. So yeah, she really likes what you're saying, and it's interesting that you're not. Yeah, you just let her be her own guide. Go ahead and roll me a d6, and what we're going to do is just an encounter roll, just see if there's an encounter. And on a 1, there will be an encounter. Okay.
Quattro.
No, a 1 would have been an encounter. So you guys are fine. You can make it back to Cotton Hill by early afternoon. Any other conversation you want to kind of strike up with her as you're going, or what's the tone of your travel? Do you have specific questions about the expiation now that she's broken it? I can answer maybe a couple quick questions. And I don't have a lot of answers for it yet. It's a front I've created, or not a front, a faction. We could flesh some stuff out if you wanted. I have some basic ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably ask questions, just making conversation. You know, the way to endear yourself to people is to ask questions about them, make them talk about themselves. So, I mean, I guess I would be curious as to, yeah, and she probably wouldn't answer direct questions very in a very detailed way, or or give straight answers. But like, I'm curious about it seems like it's a religious sect, but it also seems like it's not a religious sect in what we would call like a Western sense. Like, it definitely seems hierarchically different. So I would be interested in sort of the hierarchy of, or the sort of power structure of it, just again out of curiosity.
And I think she's kind of dropped the name, and then the expiation, and then she kind of understands that you think in similar terms, whether you do or don't. Like, when you've described working magic and she thinks of your role taking down the Shrike King, she's willing to actually start talking in ways that she hadn't. Through conversations, you get that she's like an initiate in this order. She doesn't know the secrets. She's lived there pretty much her whole life. She doesn't really remember her childhood very well. You know that there's a collection of who she refers to as masters, and they're just people who have a variety of different abilities. They're basically teachers. It's almost like a university setting. They're a collection of different teachers. They'll kind of mentor. In turn, she studied under several to learn little things. She can focus her will and like do a little talk thing. It doesn't feel like they're under any sort of particular headmaster, or there's no pope or emperor or anything over this order.
There's no David Miscavige.
No. And no Tom Cruise out running around. She's probably the closest they have to that.
She is the Tom Cruise.
You do get a sense, though, of their religiosity. They have a very she talks about it in a lot of language of guilt, although you don't feel that she's internalized guilt. They call themselves the Order of Atonement, and she describes that like people have an obligation to live a certain way in the world, but there's war, there's conflict, like there's people failing to do it. And so the order kind of sees themselves as trying to make up for the shortcomings of humanity, of not living up to like what our purpose is. And so they see themselves as basically the ones who go out there and like they'll break their minds and bodies doing the work of trying to like right the wrongs. I think she let it slip a little bit, and she'll confirm the reason she knew the Shrike King's heart, to have him destroy it, and it was going to hurt him, but it would hurt the Shrike King. Like, she had read that in when she'd gotten word that there was this goings on in Cotton Hill. She had done a little bit of research, found where they had sealed him up found why they had cut his heart out and buried it separately where he couldn't get into it. Like the expiation 300 years ago were the ones that locked him up there in the first place. And they have these archives of different kind of barely contained things around the world that they monitor. And then there's also they've solved a lot of problems. I'm picturing almost like did you ever watch the Highlander TV show?
Mm-hmm.
The Watchers?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a loose collectivist group of the Watchers, but then they do get involved when there's an outbreak, basically. It feels like it's probably it's a benevolent order in the sense they're not out to cause trouble.
And they don't seem to go out and evangelize.
No, yeah, they're not. She ended up there as a child. She doesn't remember why, but she's never seen them. Like they don't really accept newcomers in very often. She's not quite sure how they get there. I didn't watch very much of it, but that order for the Iron Fist. Did you watch the Iron Fist on Netflix?
Not very much of it.
It was a poorly done show, so I didn't watch much. But they kind of had the kind of Shangri-La magic city where people would go study to be monks. She kind of describes that sort of a thing.
Got it.
And as you're walking, she keeps kind of gesturing. You know that it's somewhere out past. If you were to go to Rockhold, the dwarven town, and you know pretty much where that is, you know that it's out past that, way off in the hills. She was able to hike to the quarry and then catch wagons. That's how she got to Cotton Hill, and actually made her way toward the tomb. She wasn't exactly sure where the tomb was, and she got picked up on the way to the tomb and kidnapped.
So I get the sense that the abilities that she has were taught to her by masters in her order.
Yes, and she portrays it as like a shaping of her energies and her will, and basically describes to you what you understand is like maybe a little bit differently poetic. You describe it in terms of intellect and knowledge and like being able to like tie a few pieces of the world together in a way that it's like reflected in the world, from your mind to the world. She's doing it through like just force of will, but you think like you could probably mimic the same spell. It's just a minor effect.
Got it.
You think what she's doing, you could do too, the same way. She just would explain it differently.
Right. Got it.
So.
That's interesting because I guess I picture myself as being more self-taught, like having kind of learned the ways of the world. So the idea of sort of passing, because didn't we say that Caleb is sort of the weird bookish prodigy kid in his town? Like he didn't have some sort of a wizard master who taught him things.
No, I think you just we said you voraciously read everything you got your hands on. You enjoyed consuming knowledge, and you kind of put things together from different sources.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think just started, kind of cultivating your own magical abilities.
Yeah. So this idea that somebody would have that like, it never occurred to me that knowledge would be passed on from person to person. It's like it's a thing that you seek on your own, and you find what you find, or you don't, or you're like most of the other people who he's met who aren't interested in learning things. But it's sort of making him think of whether someday he would want to teach other people the things that he knows. But that never occurred to him because knowledge is about the pursuit and the work of learning things for yourself.
And that probably resonates, like as you're talking to her, and if you broach that subject, they probably don't do a lot of book study. They have written records and stuff, but a lot of their practice, when she talks about the different things a master's teacher, it's mainly physical exercise. It's learning by doing.
It's listening,
repetitive,
one hand clapping.
Yeah, a lot of, and you get the sense she's probably pretty well versed in things like some sort of fighting. She's a physical, athletic person, and probably can fight for her own self. And so yeah, you think she's had some training in that, and the mental conditioning or conditioning of her will to do light magic. think it's probably worth mentioning she doesn't have any other tricks. Like she doesn't show off anything. And if you get into the question of like what else can you do, she doesn't have anything, and
Nothing.
she hasn't really weaponized that.
I can fling rocks.
She's working on it, man. So you get back to Cotton Hill. I think it's after the lunch hour. You've probably stopped and ate on the road. As we get to Cotton Hill, and that was the map I was trying to show you. I'm going to see if we can cut back there. One thing I think would be kind of cool is I want to get into maybe a little bit of a steampunky vibe. I think in the world at large, and I don't know if you've ever seen, if Callum has seen it, been to a city big enough, but I think there's big rail yards that connect, and there's big kind of steam locomotives. Cotton Hill, I think, is off the rail line, but there is a in the center of the map, and if it loads, you might see it. There's a weird kind of landing pad pattern. I think there's Zeppelins that operate as well. And what I'm picturing, instead of like the Goodyear blimp or the Hindenburg, is they pretty much have large like sphere, like hot air balloons almost, that are under nets, kind of clustered together.
Oh, cool.
And they're put onto essentially big either cargo or passenger containers. Picture like a train car.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of hooked onto these, and then there are people who have minor magical abilities of like controlling winds. Did you ever read the Wheel of Time?
No.
Series? They used on their sailing ships, they had like weather witches who would sit on the ship and like get favorable winds. I think these they have people who either, I don't know if it's magical devices or magical spells they themselves have, but they basically just magically like cause these balloons to expand, whether it's heat or some other source, enough to displace the weight in the container. They get them up off the ground, and they'll try and find weather currents to get favorable winds. But then they also use magic to try and generate wind. You know, the fast routes are where they can actually exploit natural winds, but then they themselves will below these. So it's not really a fast travel, but it's a good way to move weight. And they go from here. They have a fairly regular but expensive route from here to the big city of Frexus Port Collective, where cargo can then be put on a rail line to other major cities.
Very cool.
So as you come in, you actually see a big kind of probably a triple balloon assembly floating up over the town, moving in toward Cotton Hill, like it's going to be dropping off a delivery or picking something up.
The map did not come up, but that's okay.
It's still a black screen, is that right?
Yep.
You put on another one and just see if anything else happens. Now you should be on like a mountain scene.
I see a grid.
Oh, okay. But shift your focus to a mountain. Oh wait, into the wrong keystroke.
Ah, yes.
So I've learned if I hold down Shift and left click to ping somewhere, it should snap you where I want you to see.
Now I see lovely Bob Ross Mountains.
I'm going to try the other map again real quick and just see. I wonder if I need to.
I see a blue ping dot.
On a black square?
On a black screen.
Might just be too large of a map. This is a map I found and downloaded. I'm just going to take us back to the world. I've got the software to start drawing my own cities. I just need to start doing it. Quit stealing from other people.
Stealing is good.
So yeah, you guys come walking back in. You know where William's home is. You met with him there. He's I think he's probably long ago. His family would have had some textile crops, but he's now kind of the quartermaster. Not quartermaster, but like he runs the warehouses where they gather all the stock coming in from the surrounding communities.
He's like a foreman.
Yeah, he's a foreman or a dock master, port master. So he's fairly influential local. And
is he the one that sent me on the mission?
You had heard the rumors from a lot of folks, but he was kind of the one who represented a lot of the families. He's probably not elected, but essentially the mayor of the town. And his family also was personally, of course, hit by this. So yeah, he's the one who kind of like asked you on behalf of everybody else to go. I think we talked about there was no explicit promise of money as you were going,
Right.
but you know they're going to be extremely grateful, and there's always room for you to ask for whatever you want. But you know where he lives, and he lives probably in a fairly nice but not ostentatious home attached to one of the big warehouses in the center of town. I haven't fleshed out the other locations, but there's going to be at least a couple of inns for tradesmen. There's a couple of estates on the outside of town for some of the wealthier families that have like maybe large plantations out in the outskirts.
Mhm.
But then they have holdings here on the suburbs of Cotton Hill, as it were. Overall, a large town, several thousand, 10,000 people maybe live here. And then another 30,000 spread in small villages all along the whole area. There's a mix of races. It's primarily human. A lot of the laborers at the fields are, in this term, they use the word shu. In this game, shou. They use that race for like the collective group of subhumans, as it were. Goblins, orcs, hobgoblins, and bugbears. They were the natural denizens in this area long ago. And when the humans started settling these lands, they would conquer the tribes that were pretty much at war with each other, very primitive in the area, driven back into the mountains, the hills, the forests, took over all the prime real estate where like crops and food could be grown and livestock. There are still fierce bands of orcs and goblins that live out in the outskirts and like will prey on humans. But here in the town of Cotton Hill, there's also a pretty strong presence. Maybe a quarter to a third of the population are a mix of free and enslaved Shu.
There are slaves here?
Enslaved, yeah. There's slaves. I think a lot of the labor at the farms are maybe it's more of like a system. Like what was the system right after the Civil War?
Oh, like indentured servitude, like sharecroppers, sort of.
Yeah, more like sharecroppers. Like you're sure there's some slavery, although it's probably officially illegal. Matter of fact, I think it probably is illegal in Cotton Hill. But there are a lot of these tribes that like are basically like either do the work or starve. Like we don't care, And
Right.
so,
or even you get paid a certain amount, but you have to buy all your stuff at the company store, and the prices are so much that you'll never have enough to ever get out of it.
You're going to pick cotton for me? Okay, you need to put it in a bag. Here's a bag. It costs 3 days' pay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna I'm gonna give you a place to stay, but it costs X amount. And yep.
Yeah. So you there's exploitation, and I think you probably were pretty preoccupied with the Tomb of Iron Thorns, with the missing people, but there was a little tension. I mean, you just saw a quick study in the body language. Maybe there were a few humans kind of on guard around the warehouses. And then, like, if you get near Skid Row, you'll see like maybe a couple of bugbears giving an ugly look at one of the guards across town. And then they see you and kind of just spit and turn and walk away. So when you were through here before, you could tell like it's
there's
not
racism.
Yeah, there's institutionalized racism.
I don't like that.
And this is the town you're coming back into.
And bugbears are ugly. I just looked it up to see what they even look like. I don't know.
So it's bugbears, hobgoblins, goblins, and orcs are the main kind of. I think they're pretty clear to call them subhuman or Shu. There are also elves and dwarves that live in the continent, and hobbits, halflings, but they're not necessarily looked on with disdain. There might even be a few dwarves here.
Is this part of the culture of the whole continent? Like where I'm from, it would be that way too.
That's a good question for you. I think in this valley, we call it the Flaxen Valley. Pretty much this area nestled between the hills and the forests to the north and west. It's definitely there. If you are not from here, and I get the sense you probably aren't, then it's up to you.
Just a small town, like we didn't really establish what kind of small town, whether it's like a little fishing village,
There's a farm
or
of some
village,
sort.
or Did we say it was a farm?
I think you were from like a farming town, and you were the son of the carpenter. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was somebody who needed a carpenter, and I pictured farm, but maybe we weren't explicit. Could be a shipwright, also, yeah. Do you want to ping on the map somewhere that you're interested in being from?
Look at the map.
Or even put a text box. If you look at the select move icon, the arrow, and you go down 2 under the cube down to
Little
the
hourglass.
draw
Oh,
shape.
sorry,
It's above the time clock. There's one that's just a square box, like a black square. And if you mouse over, you'll see draw shape, and you can actually scroll down to text,
Oh, yeah.
and you could drop
Yeah.
text somewhere.
I see.
Just put it generally in the area.
Well, how long have I been traveling? Have we talked about that? Because that could, like,
No.
if I
I think you'd be pretty much from anywhere in the map. And if you choose a location, what I do is maybe open up some of the small towns and stuff that are around there too.
let's
If
say
you came from outside of the area, you probably came through Frexus Port Collective.
Yeah.
Maybe you took either an airship or the train there from wherever you came from.
Are these? I'm going to ping on the map. Are these things hills? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes, those are hills. And let me just double check real quick. I have a version of the map I can look at that I can see kind of what's there.
And this is hills also.
Yes, that's also hills. And there can, like, I didn't fill in forests everywhere. There's got to be forests, or I think the hills are probably set unless you want some somewhere else.
No, it's fine.
But
I think it would be cool to be from somewhere like this.
okay.
And I'm thinking it's like a plains kind of area, almost like a Badlands kind of a thing, like Dakotas
Nice. Okay.
kind of a feel.
Cold winters and
Yeah, so it could be a farming community, but it may be less about. Maybe it's more like horses and cattle and cowboy type farmers than it is, people growing corn and stuff.
the big thing I have on there, that big scar on the earth is called the Scar, and there's one off on the east of there as well. I kind of like that you're making that Badlands. The local lore is that some grand god, titan, something raked across the ground in those two spots, like ripped the earth up. I don't have any industry marked there yet. There could be all sorts of and there's I'm going to ping here. If you're from that area, you also know that there's a ancient destroyed bridge. Oh, why can't I ping? Right here, there's basically like an ancient destroyed bridge that spans that chasm, but it's like in ruins. It's from long before humans got here. Doesn't look to be constructed by orcs or goblins or anything else. So there's definitely like some sort of previous civilization that lived in this area. You have your character here. Can you control him?
Where is he?
And that I'm dropping you off in that area that you're in.
Yeah.
And we can pick new artwork for him if you want.
Okay, Caleb the Grey. I can
drop him wherever Caleb is.
Not there. There. I'm trying to go. Here. Darn it! I'm trying to go on this hex.
I think we're not tied to the hex. Let me just turn off align to grid.
I'm thinking that he's from this hex that sort of ties the hills and plains to the forest.
Okay. Let me see here. Oh, the number is mostly obscured.
I picked that on purpose so you couldn't see it.
It looks like you're going for 2505. Let me make a note of that.
And I think that the people who believe a god raked his claws across the earth are dumb because they don't understand plate tectonics.
Have you actually had the argument with the kids?
Yeah,
the other kids in the village,
There's
so what
called faults?
I'm picturing that in that area, the thing that keeps a city, a group there, Is there maybe a mine in the area? A little bit of logging to support the town.
Yeah.
Like, what's the main
It could
function?
be, it could be timber. You know, it could be kind of a.
You're
I
pretty
mean,
far away
I
from
was,
construction projects.
yeah, that's true. And there's no waterway to like move things along.
Is there maybe the woods in that area are a particularly valuable kind of wood that doesn't grow anywhere else? Like it's almost like a sequoia forest.
It could be,
And
and my father could be, aside from just being a carpenter, could be like maybe like sort of an artisan, where he uses this special wood to make things. I don't know whether it's like a particularly strong wood that you make industrial things out of, or whether it's more of an artistic thing.
just incidentally, on my map already, I have right here
Hmm.
a plantation that when I did that random generation, one of the things that came up was a plantation right there. I'm going to move that plantation over to the hex that you're from.
Okay.
And I think it's not so much that it's a village, it's that its Callum's father is an artisan who works with this rare kind of timber. It's found within that forest. The whole forest isn't comprised of it. There's something about the wood that makes it really special. A small town has kind of supported, like off of his income, exporting that stuff. He's able to keep like the people around that kind of help. The transportation, the collection, he's probably hires like the loggers that go out and get it. He's got apprentices that work for him. And then there's probably a very minor, like a couple times a year, one of those airships comes in and picks up whatever he can send out. Just because there's no rail or anything like that.
Right.
But I think that's probably how like the heavy and is the wood. What's special about the wood he works with? Is it
I think it
sturdy and
would.
strong? It's like ironwood, or
I think it would either be that it's something that's has some sort of unique physical quality, like it's really strong, but also very like not pliable is not the word, but it's got,
like supple.
yeah. It could be something like that, um, or it could be aesthetically like it's got this strange and beautiful coloration that's this is the only place in the world where this tree is found. That's whatever it's purple heartstone wood. I don't know, but it could be one or the other. It's like a um, because it's so rare. It's a sign of wealth and status to have something made out of this. I don't know which is more interesting.
I'm even thinking maybe both. I think if you had a lightweight but super durable and yet also shapeable wood, anything from
You could make super fast
instruments,
ships. You could make musical instruments. You could make
weapons,
incredibly
armor.
precise bows with it. That, you know, if it's got this strength but also pliability, maybe it's like you can fire arrows at a longer distance. And with, I don't know, how physics works.
I'm also thinking that maybe because part of the game of Scarlet Heroes, if you use the main campaign, is that humans have only been here for maybe a few hundred years, like 500 years or something like that, and they came to a continent that was already settled by somebody else. But then there's also ancients before the orcs were here.
Mm,
I'm kind of getting a feeling that maybe somewhere near there is a port that was like the original human point of contact, like where Columbus landed,
sure.
and that the discovery of this wood or seeking it out because it's somehow like there was an example of it out in the larger world abroad. Send explorers down here. I think maybe your estate is like one of the older homes. There's not enough industry. It's difficult enough that like only his home, only your home, that plantation can meet the demand.
Hmm.
Because there's not necessarily a lot of competition at this point. But I just think like it's probably like rooted in in the history of the continent coming through here is that location.
Well, and probably I think also um, it's important to maintain the secrecy of exactly where it is, and maybe only a select few people have access to it, and that's why I don't know. That's why it's noteworthy. Like, if anybody in the continent knew where it was and what it was, it would be
They'd
gone.
all chop the trees down. Yeah.
So part of um, sort of part of his family's legacy is not only harvesting and working with this stuff, but also like curating it to make sure that it um, sticks around.
So there's like a forestry service aspect to it as well.
Sure.
Um,
He's comes from a liberal granola family.
and it probably requires some sort of alchemical practice. Like there's something in actually like taking this wood and turning it into the finished project is a secret, like a family recipe to do it properly. Maybe the trees could be killed by just anybody, but actually to shape it, it's got to be soaked in a special brine. There's something that happens that your father does.
What is it? What do we think it looks like? Is there a color to it? Is it something about the grain? Is it multiple colors kind of weaving in and out of each other?
Kind of, I'm picturing like some purples and silvers, but maybe it's like the sheen on an oil spill or something.
Yeah. Oh, where it's almost sort of iridescent, like
Yeah.
the color kind of shifts in the light. Would it make sense? I don't want anything with any utility, because I don't want to like create this awesome thing and say, yeah, I've got this whatever that's amazing.
You should feel free to do that. Like that's kind of part of this game is you're the hero. That you're only one player, right? Like, so yeah, if Callum has something,
I'd rather build roadblocks for my guy than build cool stuff that I can exploit.
Make a cool thing, and I'll have people try and steal it from you. Right?
Well, what I was going to say, does it make sense for him to have some little, like, he's not a sentimental person in that way. Like, his home is important to him. It's obviously, and I guess this special wood could tie into these plagues that are happening. But would it make sense for him to have some sort of a memento made out of this stuff, whether it's like a ring on one of his fingers that's made out of this wood that has a special, like, looks like a certain thing, like you know right away what it is, or some sort of like
maybe your book
around his
arm,
or that could be.
Your book is about. I was before you said ring, I was thinking of an armband also. And I think it would be something that you have a pretty reasonable chance, like whatever it is, if you were to need, it's not a good pry bar, right? Because it's flexible, but if you need something like it's basically bulletproof, like it's durable,
right?
So it's not necessarily a pry bar, but you could definitely use it as you could use your book to block incoming arrows and shit like that. And it could be a number of things, but it's really up to you what column has. So go ahead and kind of make that decision and add it down, or we can leave. You know what? Maybe you even have, you know how we're doing your rations and your ammo as a usage die.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have like a D6 usage die of like stuff made out of this wood. What do we call the wood right now? Because of the iridescence, I'm just thinking like pearl wood, oyster wood, something.
Yeah.
Mother of pearl, motherwood.
Motherwood.
Motherwood. Who would motherwood?
I actually kind of like that. So two things that I think would be kind of cool. One of them has some utility, but it's not really all that useful. Could it be that his book is bound in this stuff? Just because that would be neat. Could it also be that, like, his father is this carpenter who works with this material, and I'm this super geeky, super nerdy. I don't know if this technology would exist in the world yet, but would it make sense for him to have made some sort of like clockwork thing, or maybe even a clock, like a pocket watch or something, that's out of this wood? So it's like this weird sort of old meets new steampunk, but not made out of metal, kind of a thing. Like
I kind of picture like the gears, the springs, everything is made out of just perfectly honed wood.
right.
I like that. And it has a function. Is it a clock function? Is it a compass? Is it?
I think it'd be neat for it to be like a pocket watch, because I feel like we're probably, I guess the time would be important because you've got train schedules and things that people are keeping track of.
Good. I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah.
So maybe clocks are a thing in this world, whether they're steam run or whether they're wound or whether they're like old fashioned water
Gravity
clocks or
clocks.
something. But his is a little bit different somehow, to where it's running on mechanisms as opposed to whatever sundials or whatever it is that people use.
It's probably, yeah, I love the idea that it's a pocket watch, and it's probably the sort of thing where like the time that goes into making one of these it's just incredibly precious, to where like only somebody who's very filthy rich would have even seen one or recognized what it is, and they probably don't even have them. Like there's maybe a few dozen in the continent.
I figured that I made the one that I carry.
Nice. Like your dad maybe trained you to make it. That was
Mhm.
one of the practices for you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's something where like maybe you actually also have
Or it could
a
be that
small
he's
block of wood that you're working on. Like you're kind of wood, like maybe you have a project in progress, right? Like you have your watch, you have your book. Maybe you also know how to work the wood, and like that's something you could just be doing in the background as you're carrying a little piece that you whittle.
Or it could even be that my father is this like very accomplished carpenter, and he taught me how to work the wood and how to be an artist with it. But at the same time, I like the idea that the pocket watch is unique to me. Like it fits with the analytical and very precise nature of his mind, and how like there's rules and there's logic and there's sort of weights and measures and standards that you live by. It just seems very particular to him. Like he would have taken what his father taught him, and his idea of art would be to make this very technical, mechanical, precise thing, as opposed to making something beautiful. Does that make sense?
I'm kind of getting, yeah, it does. I'm kind of getting two impressions. One is your father probably doesn't own or run the plantation. He's probably like the head artisan.
Sure.
He's probably not, and it's not necessarily this case, but I'm picturing he's not really the business of running it.
Mm-hmm.
He probably cares about the woods. He works for a company that cares, but he's really kind of lost, head in the clouds kind of artist.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're the other way for intellect. He was working on something that dealt with like the tension of springs and the precise application of these things. And like you said, you invented a clock out of it using his lessons, but your own way. Like, and so there's no other watches out here. People know the function of time telling. Maybe if you explain to them that what you're looking at, then, I mean, the mechanism doesn't have to be a 12-hour dial. It's whatever you want it to be. They understand the function, but they'd have no way of knowing how it works or how to even price or covet it, other than it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the balance. I think there's something threatening the trees also that we'll look into, and that's what first. We mentioned there was an incident when you were a kid that kind of you're still trying to atone for. There's also some threatening trees. I'll think of those in the background.
Did we say that there were plagues coming and somehow I felt like I was responsible for it, or?
I think you left town because you felt responsible for something very local. But as you've traveled the world, you realize like, oh no, like across the world, or across at least the continent, there's issues.
Got it.
Not necessarily you think you've started like with the whole world's things.
Sure.
But yeah, you probably took the blame locally, and now you're like, oh wait, that wasn't me. That's just like one of many things.
Yeah.
So we can as we kind of move forward to the story arc, we can kind of figure out what happened in your area.
Right. Maybe and I guess also what I'm working on with this wood, and maybe you need like very specific tools to work with it. Like nothing that's crazy or that has any intrinsic value other than this specific purpose.
Yeah, you might have consumed all your tools, all your chemicals you need, and now like you might find new ways to do it or new. Yeah,
Mhm.
your work stops periodically as you need to figure out how to take the next step, but you're always working on it.
Mhm.
That's cool. I like that. So I think in your travels, like whatever route you took, you ended up in Frexasport Collective. That's how you came over, got to the Cotton Hill. It was a little bit of a wide tangent, but it was good. Um, let's take a quick break. I'm gonna go pee real quick and grab a Coke Zero, and then I probably have about a half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay.
We can kind of go into town, meet Wilhelm, and then figure out what you're gonna do. And I've got kind of two seeds, two adventure seeds right now.
Okay.
One you've kind of keyed into, but we'll look at them and maybe start looking at what we'll do next week.
Awesome.
I'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Yep. Hello.
Hello, hello.
So I know we haven't made a lot of like plot progress tonight, but I've really enjoyed sort of. I feel like the first session or the first adventure we played, I really, really liked the sort of mechanics of it, but the character didn't really. He was just sort of like a framework, and I feel like that's getting fleshed out a lot tonight. So I'm enjoying that.
Very good. I am too. I think one of the cool things about, and this is my first time doing just a one-on-one game designed that way, is we really can delve into these things. Like another player would be like, "Oh, that's your character. I'm not invested in that." And they
Right.
don't care, but we should really chase this down. And when I went to relieve my bladder pressure, I already started coming up with an idea of like, okay, now I'm getting a sense of what might be behind the scenes, like causing imbalance, like just from that brief little talk. So I think those conversations can be fruitful, and they bubble out in interesting ways.
It all comes back to the motherwood.
And I misspoke. Um, there are no slaves in the Flaxen Valley. There are only workers. It is very much the system we talked about with the sharecropping type thing. Um, I have added 2 adventure hooks, and I'm going to show them to you real quick. Well, let's play through getting back town first, and then I'll show them to you. As I said, you come walking back toward Cotton Hill. You're on foot. You gathered the road south of the tomb of the Iron Thorn. And so you're walking up on the main road coming into Cotton Hill. As you get up, you pass by very pastoral scenes. There's some nice plantations as you're moving in. There's actually bed and breakfasts that are very much like catering to like a touristy crowd.
Hmm.
People from the big city want to come down here and kind of live amongst the folk.
I'm in the wine country.
Yeah, you're pretty much in the wine country. Very genteel. I'm picturing like a Georgia plantation kind of vibe as you're getting in here. And as you come into town, big bustling town, there's like we mentioned, there's that undercurrent of like the racial tensions. The Shu make up a pretty sizable percentage of the people here, enough to be disruptive should they not like it. When we get to the adventure hooks that I've written, one of them makes it clear that like there is no legal slavery, but clearly there's still the tension that's going on. Yeah, you know where Wilhelm lives and works is kind of in the center of town. The warehouse district is right next to. There's a high walled area. They have strict controls on where the balloons land and pick up crates to get like any sort of repair and maintenance. And the warehouses are just near there, just for the simple logistics of being close to where the cargo is taken and delivered. But do you have anything else you want to do on your way through Cotton Hill? We don't have the locations defined yet, but are there any locations that you want to kind of put in this town as you move in?
I mean, nothing that I can think of off the top. I do. A question occurred to me as you were describing the walk back into town. After talking to, is it Annalie?
Mm-hmm.
After talking to her about the Shrike King and sort of the tomb, it occurs to me: is the Tomb of Iron Thorns like a pretty noteworthy place? Like when they sent me there with this quest, did they know and did I know what is sort of what the legends say is there, or is it like almost like a forgotten legend that her order knows about because they were involved in it, but for everybody else it's like, oh, that's just some ruins and
Good question.
hinky stuff going on around there.
Until let's see, we talked briefly as you did a really good roll, and like you had found some legend about the Shrike King,
Right.
in the first game. They didn't know what was there. I think we decided you ended up there after having deduced like, well, the earliest attacks, the earliest disappearances were in this general area. So you were kind of searching that area. You found what you thought was a big hill, but as you went around and excavated, you saw where like some probably some brush, maybe a little bit of fallen rock had been cleared away, and there was those big doors that were bound with like runes and iron or bronze chains.
And now I know it was probably Annalie that moved it.
And that might be an assumption you're making. You might be forgetting, and maybe I didn't make it clear.
The robbers too.
There were the two robbers, one that you found his corpse and one that had actually joined you as a skeleton for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones who broke in. And the one robber that you were talking to, the one that had been reanimated as a skeleton and then given his mind back as punishment,
had killed his friend.
No, he hadn't killed his friend.
He stole his stuff.
He stole his ring, yeah. But he had mentioned like his friend, I think he was calling him his cousin, had gotten him into it. That somebody had sent his cousin to go open this tomb up. There's treasure in there. So they had been, somebody had kind of pulled the string to launch them that direction. You know that they're the ones that opened it up.
Got it.
That had happened months ago. People started disappearing, and Anna had shown up like just a week before you.
In reaction to the fact that it was open.
Yeah, so they basically like they listen to the rumors. They hear like, oh crap, there's trouble here. It sounds like the Shrike King. Let's go check it out. She initially portrayed that she got sent there to handle it. You've since kind of figured out in your conversation with her, she actually like took it upon herself to like abscond and go like handle it. She's a little plucky adventurer, but not necessarily competent because she got captured and was going to be forced to marry him. Yeah,
that would be embarrassing if you're from the order that imprisoned the Shrike King, and then
now
you're his wife.
And that was actually
it's like a pure Romeo and Juliet kind of a story.
Why Montague?
Does that make me Mercutio?
Tybalt. You're on Annalie's side.
A pox on all of their families.
God damn. But yeah, so to more directly answer your question, none of the folk here know what's up in those hills. There's no living memory of it amongst the settlers in the Flaxen Valley. She knew about it. She wasn't the one that opened it. Kind of when you go back. Oh, did you leave the doors open? Did you try and obfuscate? Would your you have magics that you could kind of collapse things around them? Like, would you try and seal it off, or would you leave it like open and tell people about it, or open and leave it alone?
No, I'd seal it off.
Okay. And you know that what you did killed the Shrike King. Like, I'm not going to spring that on you like, oh, he's been reanimated, unless something like super crazy magical happened in the future where he's resurrected, which I'm not planning. But you know that like what you did definitively killed him. It didn't just put him into torpor, or he's not hibernating to come back next week.
I don't have to find all his Horcruxes.
No, none of that shit. Jessica is really proud. She just ordered and just received a official Harry Potter licensed Slytherin bathrobe. She's really big into the Slytherin house.
She's House Slytherin?
Yeah, even though I've told her that's not acceptable.
You're not Slytherin?
No, not even a little.
What are you?
I say that I'm Hufflepuff because I like the name, and I think they're the silly ones. But I've read the books; they're enjoyable. But I don't.
I did the Sorting Hat thing, and I think I'm a Ravenclaw.
That makes sense.
Which are the smart ones, right?
Yeah.
I want to show you something really quickly that has nothing to do with our game.
Okay.
So, Cassie is working at Winslow's now, and she's got a little bit of a sense of humor about her predecessor and the fact that he cut a lot of corners and the product wasn't great. And so, to be silly, she started this thing where the motto of the kitchen is "Make food great again."
Nice.
And so I ordered on this website where you can get like personalized like riffs on Make America Great Again hats. One for her that says "Make food great again." It's supposed to be a navy blue hat that says "Make food great again." I'll show you what they sent me. It was not correct. This is what I got.
What the fuck?
Make again.
Did you order just one prototype, or? Did you get
I just
ordered
was going to get just one for her. I wasn't going to get them for the whole crew because they're like $26 a piece. I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on jokey hats for everybody.
It was made by a Trumpster. God damn it. That's so
Right.
frustrating.
But I
But if
emailed
she,
and bitched at them, and I have not heard back. So we'll see.
I think it would be a good hat for her to wear anyway. And if they send out food of substandard quality, she just turn her head right or left and show them that. It's like, make it again. Make food great again. That's funny.
Anyway, sorry for the diversion.
No, that's good. Let's see here.
The belly of the beast here in terms of Trump.
Is it pretty strong?
Not in St. Louis. St. Louis is very blue. The city of St. Louis, at least, is very blue. St. Louis County is purple. The rest of Missouri is terrifyingly red. I don't know if we're the ones that had Todd Aiken as a candidate for the Senate. Claire McCaskill trounced him the last election cycle because he said that the fact that a rape victim is pregnant is proof that she wasn't raped, because if women get raped, their body has, quote, a way of shutting those things down.
Oh man, yeah,
So
I remember hearing that in the news.
Yeah, so if you get pregnant, you clearly weren't raped, so that your body wouldn't let a pregnancy happen if you were raped. So that was his thing, and of course the Republican Party begged him to drop out because he still won the primary even after that. They begged him to drop out, and he refused, and he just got annihilated in the general. But that's my state, right?
I can't get over Roy Moore winning his primary. We've got a couple of states that have put like actual avowed Nazis ahead of non-Nazi candidates.
There's a guy who won a state
Massachusetts
Congress. No, here in Missouri, there's a guy who won a state Congress primary on the Republican side who, on his website, says some of the great things that Hitler did. He doesn't say Nazis are great or that Hitler's great, but he said he's one of these that said, "Well, Hitler did some good things," and he won his primary, and he's would hope to God is going to get destroyed in the actual election, but we'll see.
I think it's so telling that they feel the need to say Hitler did some good things, but they're going to presumably never credit anything that Obama or Clinton or Bill Clinton.
Well, he's not American like Hitler.
Yeah. God damn it. Oh.
But in St. Louis, actually, one more diversion then. They had a race for the Democratic primary for St. Louis County prosecutor. And there was no Republican running. So whoever won the Democratic primary is going to be the St. Louis County prosecutor. And it was a guy who had been in the prosecutor's office for 27 years, who got some bad press for not indicting the officer who killed Michael Brown. And he was going up against an African-American guy named Wesley Bell, who was a Ferguson City Council member and who was very like a proponent of the protests. And I actually know Wes Bell. I did some panel discussions with him on race and law, and he won, but convincingly. People thought he had no chance to winning, and he won with like a 10-point margin.
Is he a good candidate?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Michael Brown shooting, I only know what I'd seen in the news, but that was justified as hell, I thought.
Well, I think that's true. I agree with you. But the protests around that started about that killing and grew up around something else about the way law enforcement was working in Ferguson.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Ferguson report, the DOJ's report on Ferguson, it was a pretty screwed up situation. Just the way that, the city council and 90% of the police force is white, 90% of the citizenry is African American, and essentially they were using fines and bail to. It was more about fundraising for the city than it was about dispensing justice, and more about keeping people in a cycle of jail. You know, you would get poor people, and you would hit them with huge fines and court costs that they could never pay. And then when they couldn't pay, you'd put them in jail, and then you'd let them bail out or bond out, and then they wouldn't be able to pay another thing, and it would grow and grow and grow and grow. I teach the report in my criminal law class every semester, and one of the anecdotal stories is about a woman who got a parking ticket and was in and out of county jail for 7 years, and ended up having like tens of thousands of dollars of fines over one parking ticket.
And can't hold a job down.
She couldn't afford to pay. And so it would just build and build and build and build and build. And when at a certain point, you got to ask, like, what are we doing? What's the point of all this? So anyways.
In Texas, there's a local legislator who I fucking hate. I mean, on a personal level, I fucking hate him. But he is advocating for a bill to address that in Texas, because while we don't have debtor's prison, if you miss a payment to a court, you're fucked. And they do the same sort of thing where these cycles grow up. And
well, one of Wes's things is addressing the bail system and how it works, and he's a big proponent of just eliminating the bail system, and just to say, if we can establish that you're a danger or you're a flight risk, you're in jail, period. But if it's a nonviolent crime and you don't have the means or the likelihood of running away, you don't go to jail pending your trial. You don't have to pay bail. You're not a flight risk and you're not a danger. There's no reason to imprison you when you haven't been proven guilty of anything. You're suspected of something, but you're still an innocent citizen until we prove something. So what's the justice of putting you in jail pending your trial? Because really what it comes down to is poor people, which tend to be minorities, can't afford to pay bail. And so even if it's a nonviolent offense, they're going to sit in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting approach.
I've never really questioned the need to have a bail system, but I guess it's all predicated on the idea that you haven't been proven guilty, but you have to sit in jail unless you can demonstrate a little financial standing to get out. It
Right.
does strike of a weird about. I've never questioned it before. I've never really thought about.
Well, in the
question
idea
about its application and how maybe there should be. It's based off of income. So if you're dirt poor, there's no, it's disproportionately so low. There's like an earned tax credit. You just don't pay it. You don't
Right.
get charged bail. But
the idea is that bail should be enough to incentivize you to not run away, right? Like if you're a danger to run away, we're going to tie up enough of your money in the court so that you won't run away. And there's just a lot of people, a lot of homeless people, or a lot of really, really poor people who there's no amount that they can pay. There's just no amount that they can pay. And it compounds the problem more because either they lose their job or they aren't making income to support their family that's at home. So not only can they not afford bail, but they're building debt while they're in jail not working.
Well, you said that woman 7 years, and you said tens of thousands of dollars over one parking ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going in and out of jail, you're not keeping stable per job. Your boss isn't going to keep you around. Yeah, I hadn't thought about how like that kind of a bad extreme.
So anyways, it was kind of a big, crazy surprise that he won. I'm excited that he won just because I know him and I like him personally, and I think that he's a really smart, capable guy. Yeah. I don't know anything about. I won't say I don't know anything. I don't know the incumbent that he beat well. I know of him, but I don't know him well. But it's rare. I can't think of another time that there's been a political race where I've really known one of the candidates and liked them and trusted them. So it's exciting that he won.
That's cool. And I hope as long as he's the better candidate, that's fantastic. When you said that the other DA suffered because he didn't prosecute or didn't indict on Michael Brown, everything I've seen on that, like that's not something to hold against him. Maybe there's other things where maybe he's a great candidate, but you said Wells, is that his name? Maybe
Yeah.
he's just a better candidate. You know, that's what you want, is the choice between two great candidates. But I could even see I something like Trayvon Martin. I kind of see it going both ways. But Michael Brown, I just never had any doubt after the videos came out of him, the way he treated
in the
people.
convenience store. Yeah,
the convenience store. And there was another one of him. There was an old man, looked like probably a homeless dude in the neighborhood with a backpack. And Michael Brown and his buddies kind of set on him and started demanding his backpack. And then Michael Brown just started beating the shit out of him. Did you see that video?
I didn't see that one.
I mean, just brutally kicking the shit out of this skinny old, looked like he's probably homeless or unwell. He didn't defend himself. And God, unless I'm misremembering that it was Brown. But between that and choking the convenience store owner, he was. I have no doubt that he was assaulting the cop the way the cop said he was, and that he was a danger. And I think everybody who was saying the hands up, don't shoot, turned out most of them weren't there, and those that were there recanted later and said that he never actually was running away with his hands up or whatever. And
well, it was interesting. It was interesting to see how those protests went. There was definitely a very earnest and albeit passionate but very earnest segment of that protest who, I think had good intentions. And there was also a segment of the protests, both from locally and bust in, who were there to cause trouble, who were there to, fight police.
And I imagine a lot of provocateurs from the right wing who were trying to incentivize, trying to antagonize things too.
And the police didn't help matters either, in the way that they tried to keep the peace. There were a lot of situations where the officers were great and were, sort of stayed their hand. And I'm not talking about when the National Guard came in and there was tear gas and tanks and all that stuff, but like there was also times when there were peaceful protests and police formed a ring around just entire protest groups and closed in and chanted, "Whose streets? Our streets," at the protesters.
Jesus Christ.
Like, all right, this is...
The cops should be handing out bottles of water, saying, keep it safe out there.
Right.
Let the mayor hear your voice.
Right.
Not challenging over ownership of the streets.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm excited that Wes won. We'll see what he does. But it's interesting that kind of candidate would win in such a crazy red state.
With that Ocasio, the woman in New York, Beto O'Rourke is polling better and better in Texas. He's actually going to be down here on the 14th of September. I'm hoping to get a chance to go hear him speak. There's often politics and social identity is a pendulum, and I think it's strung so weird and so hard to the right that a lot of people are getting political identity that wouldn't traditionally do it. A lot of young people, hopefully, and
I've been reading more and more on different publications about that do sort of election predictions, that it won't be too many more election cycles before Texas swings blue on a national level, in a presidential race. I don't think it'll be 2020, but who knows what
if Trump got it again, I don't know. He's not liked by a lot of people in Texas. I guess
it depends who he's running against too. But depending on kind of where the pendulum is swinging, like if Trump wins in 2020, I'll bet Texas would go blue in 24.
I can see that.
I think it would be a Reagan-like landslide back to the left if Trump wins again in 2020. I think in 24 it'll be like Reagan-Mondale, where it's like one state goes to red and everything else is blue. Because that's what happened when Reagan ran against Mondale. I mean, he won almost every state in the country. I think Mondale only won his own state and maybe one other thing.
But Trump also had the most electoral votes of any president ever.
Well, it was reflected in the crowd at his inauguration.
He started day one. He started lying. Jesus Christ. I don't know why I'm surprised. I guess I wasn't really surprised. So anyway, Cotton Hill is on fire. There's riots in the street. The town guard is saying, "Whose streets? Our streets." All the cotton warehouses are burning up.
I want to make Cotton Hill great again.
No, just make again. Make again.
Oh.
God damn it. What time is it? 11:30. You want to push on for a little bit longer?
I can go a little bit longer if you want.
So yeah, you didn't have anywhere else in mind to go for Cotton Hill. I think as you approach the father of Wilhelm is Wilhelm Senior. Wilhelm Furrow is his name. Wilhelm Furrow is standing there. He's got a handful of ledger sheets kind of clipped onto a board, and he's got a grease pencil, and he's looking at these different stacks and of kind of palletized stacks of raw like cotton, probably run through the cotton gin already, but kind of getting packed up and sent out. He's got a couple of people that are reporting numbers to him, and he's marking them down and sending them on. As he's talking to somebody, the guy's eyes kind of flash over to you, like you make eye contact with him. You see his shoulders just kind of drop, and he turns and he looks at you, and you see him just kind of lose his composure for a second. And he turns back and he says something to the guy and sends him on. And he sets the clipboard down, sets the pen on it with a real heavy kind of thud. And he turns and he looks to you and he starts walking toward you, and his eyes go over just quickly to Anna. He looks past you. You know he's looking for his sons, and he's just already resigned to not seeing them. His eyes settle on you, and he comes forward.
Wilhelm, it's good to see you well. It's good to see you again. Is there a place that we can talk? Maybe your wife could be there as well. I'm sure that she's interested in what we found and what we have to say.
Yeah. You look like you've been on the road a while. Are you hungry? Should we go into the house? And
I mean, any hospitality you'd like to offer, we're happy to take. I don't want to impose. Yeah, I know that you have other things on your plate than.
Did they die well?
Let's find your wife and we'll talk.
Okay, come with me.
She should hear everything as well.
Yeah, he starts walking away and he thinks of it and he calls somebody over and kind of tells them take over the inventory. Kind of walking ahead of you, and then he stops. Come on, he ushers you and Anna both up. Takes you into his home, which is like I said, just off the main warehouse there. Calls his wife down. I don't have a name ready for her, but I think Marta. Name her Marta. Calls to her. Marta comes into the house. I think they've got a couple of goblins kind of running around underfoot. They come checking in too, heads kind of bobbing. They seem pretty positive, pretty happy. They get a sense of the tone right away, and they look, say, can we get you anything? And he looks to you and says, are you hungry, thirsty? Just need to get off your feet. What do you want? How can we help? What can I offer you? Sorry.
Just something to drink is fine for me. I don't know, Hanley, if you need anything.
She looks at me. A tea, please. Thank you. That would be wonderful.
That's fine for me as well.
He turns and he says, "What's the?" I'm just gonna say Goober for now because I don't have the goblin name. But Goober, please put some tea on and bring it to us. We'll be in the study. And Marta stands there, looks, and breathes. come with me. And she gathers up a few little odds and ends, and everybody heads into the study. He's got a big, I think, solid wood paneled study. I think your eyes very quickly catch on. There's some very small knickknack made out of motherwood. Maybe it's the family name Furrow kind of etched in to this little piece. And it's like, you know how sometimes there's like a bronze plate put on something? It's just like in the mantle. And it's actually just showing off that they have motherwood. Like there's there's nothing else to it. The mantle is just a very nice like mahogany or something.
Right.
But yeah, their family name and motherwood
it's kind of a waste. I don't say that, but
yeah.
it's neat that they have it, but it's kind of such a useful thing to be made into aesthetic.
I think that's a good insight into Callum, yeah. And you can tell like it's a clean room. They have a bookshelf. There's a lot of bound books on the shelf. Looks like everything's in pretty good order. Quick glance at the titles. There's probably things that you've are familiar with. A lot of titles you haven't seen before. Nice kind of overstuffed chairs, comfortable room to kind of sit in as a family and chat or to read on your own. I picture him being maybe a pipe smoker. There's probably a little ash stand next to one of the big chairs. He sits down on basically a love seat and has Marta sit next to him, and he puts his hand on her thigh, and she reaches and grabs onto his arm, and you see her knuckles white, and she's kind of clenched into his arm. And he gestures to you to sit. There's a couch sitting across from them. He gestures to both you and Anna to sit down there.
I'll have a seat. Thank you for your hospitality. First, let me say that I met your sons. They were well when I first saw them. And the most important thing for you to know was that their love for one another and their sort of protection for one another was very strong, and they cared for one another a great deal and cared for your family a great deal. They didn't make it back. And Annalie and myself would not have made it back if it weren't for them. They were brave, they were strong, they were committed to one another, and they were committed to you. And we're heroes, our heroes. There was a great evil in that tomb. That
what was the tomb? Who took them? And she's weeping, like not making a lot of noise, but like heaving chest, kind of occasionally sobs come through. He's sitting kind of stoic. You get the sense he kind of knew they were dead.
It was an ancient evil. It was an ancient intellect that wanted to pervert the laws of nature, wanted to make life out of death, and your sons put an end to it. And we were lucky to have them with us. I don't have much to offer you to comfort you other than to say that they were brave, they were smart, they were charming, and they were looking after each other in the way that a father and mother would hope their sons would. And in the end, they were instrumental to us destroying this evil beast, instrumental to me and my friend here getting out alive. I did bring a token. I don't want to diminish your loss. This isn't meant to replace your sons. And if I could have left this behind and brought them with, of course I would have. But I wanted you and your family and generations in the future to have something to remember what heroes they were. And so I'll pull out the Shrike King sword and present it to them.
I think she kind of recoils from it. He looks at it for just a long moment while you present it. He reaches up kind of gingerly and takes it by the hilt. The way he kind of takes its weight, like he's probably held a sword before. You don't get any sense that he's a soldier or anything. He kind of takes its weight, and he's not like caught by surprise by it. And he looks at it. Is this the blade that killed my sons?
No, it's not. I wouldn't bring that to your home.
He lays it on the coffee table. It's in front of his knees.
And I don't want your memory of your sons to be the way that they fell. If you, sir, want to step into another room with me and I can tell you that story, I'd rather not. I don't think it's important, frankly. I think what's important is for you to remember them as they were and remember them as the heroes that they are. And to take this as a token of the great evil that they destroyed.
Let's see. Kind of at a loss. He's wrestling with whether or not he wants details and doesn't want details, right? And then he says, "I'm being selfish. There were many children from the Vale that have gone missing. Did any of them come home?
No.
Will any come home?
No. Your sons were the strongest, and they were the ones that survived and helped us to vanquish what was there. The others who disappeared are at peace, but no one came home."
Roll me I think we're gonna probably. I'm generally thinking charisma. Would you advocate for anything else as you're kind of pushing into this? Are you doing anything with?
I don't think so. I think I'm role playing this guy as more charismatic than I built him to be, though.
Okay.
But I think charisma makes the most sense.
And then
D6.
It's 2d6, difficulty of 9 to just get them to kind of accept that it's over. 13 to make them be at peace. And I'm wondering if there's any pluses off of quick study.
I don't think there would be under quick study. I don't know how my studies or studying them would help me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're just kind of pulling the Band-Aid off. You're doing a good job at like not pushing it in their faces, but I think it's 2d6. So I think you're not going to be able to hit 13. So you're not going to make it easy, but you could hit the 9.
No.
Fuck
you! Get out of our house.
His jaw is set, and he says, he looks down to the sword with like a little bit of kind of contempt. And then he looks to you and he says, "I thank you for the news. We would have lying awake and never known if our dreams were true or not, if our boys would come across that threshold. But they won't. They're dead. So many are dead." And I think Annaling speaks up and says, "They were heroes, though. They Wilhelm, he struck at the Shrike King himself. He avenged his brother. He gave himself that brave column here could end the king's evil and stop any further threat." She kind of makes a case for you, and he's just kind of stone faced. He says, we're strong folk. We'll be okay, but there are other problems. There are other challenges that face our people now, and we are dreadfully short-handed to deal with them. Crops need to be brought in. Supplies need to be brought in. Exports need to go out. We can't sit here and dilly-dally. Colum, I thank you for your your time bringing us this news in person. I'm glad you got to the bottom of it. I won't take you up on your offer for details. Tomorrow comes no matter what we know about yesterday.
It's true. It's what we can rely on. I think I appreciate hospitality, and I understand what you're saying. I would tell you this, and then I'll not impose on you anymore. It might not be today, especially with the pain of the news that you're getting. It might not be tomorrow. It probably won't be. But I think someday, hopefully sooner rather than later, you'll think of your sons and not think of loss. You'll think of your sons and think of how proud you are for what they accomplished in their last efforts. With that, I'll wish you the best of luck and say thank you, and say if there's anything that we can do to help you in with the effort that you have to put out, with the challenges you have, I'll try.
As you're saying that, the goblin, kind of man at arms or maitre butler or whatever he is, comes in with a tray of tea and some like probably bronze or copper cups. Starts setting him out, pouring tea, and he actually, as he's doing it, he's a little distracted looking at the sword, and he spills some. It kind of goes astray, and Wilhelm, God damn it, Goober! He reaches over to Gravatal, and Goober reaches over and like Wilhelm, I'm sorry. I heard what was said. You, Marta, let me clean this up. I'm sorry. And he finishes pouring the tea, cleans everything up. Looks to the both of you, and just kind of shakes his head. You can tell he's sad. He feels sad about the news.
Right.
But he's looking at you a little interested. He kind of saw the sword and was curious about it. Makes his way out of the room. And Wilhelm says, there's never an end to the problems. Workers are rebelling, unwilling to bring the crops in that we need and pursue the harvests in time and tend to their jobs. And the dwarves are getting restless, some troubles they're having. He kind of starts going into a list of little issues. It sounds like he's normally, I think, not somebody who would complain. I'm going to show 2 documents to player.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see those, and they're available under adventure hooks under your character sheet anyway. He kind of goes into these 2 different things.
I'm reading Foray into the Maw. Okay.
It's kind of both of those are out there on the table. Neither of them is like a time sensitive. There's both have some things going on. If you pursue one instead of the other, you're not going to lose anything. No opportunity. Like the other ones, just kind of. I'm trying to design these to where, like, if you get around to them, they'll be resolved. If I decide that, like, if you ignore the malcontents one and it becomes interesting, then I'd presage like, oh, now it's getting more bad. Or if you ignore the Fray into the Maw, like now the dwarves are like actually disrupted.
Right.
But it won't be an arbitrary, like you're not going to just pay that cost for not doing that one. Sometimes a video game makes you choose one or the other one and you actually pay a bad cost.
Right.
right now, these are the kind of the two hooks that I've written up adventures for. That there might be something if either one, addressing the racial tensions of not slave labor by trying to track down whatever's going on there.
Remember the good
Or
old days.
when you could just treat them like property. Oh my God, there was a really good thing on Reddit recently of how Trump and his people are saying everybody's triggered all the time and everybody's too sensitive. We're all snowflakes, and the response was just a series of pictures of no coloreds allowed and whites only drinking fountains. Like, you call us triggered and snowflakes. You couldn't stand to have a person of color sit next to you at the deli.
Right. Right.
How much of a snowflake were you? I think it's good to turn that around on those assholes.
Yeah.
You get pissed off at the wrong genitalia in your bathroom. Do either of these seem more exciting or
the
interesting?
foray into the Moss seems more exciting.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe I don't want to push into it right now, but I've got that adventure kind of plotted out.
Cool.
It would take you out of town. Your first stop would be Rockhold. So we'll kind of pick up next week at Rockhold.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to Jessica and see if she has any ideas about when she wants to resume. I don't know if we'd want to offer to let her. I think we could have her as another character in the same kind of story, or we could look at changing to Godbound system, or we could switch over to Monster of the Week, kind of depending on what you'd both want to do. But I'd at least like to push Column into Foray at the Maw.
Sure.
Even if we can't do it Sundays, we could maybe occasionally play on Thursdays or something, have them both going on.
Yeah. I would definitely be into whatever way forward we go.
Very cool. What's that 8 that you just rolled?
It's just me being silly. I put the computer I'm playing on has a little bit more power than the one I usually play on, so I switched it so I see the 3D dice roll on the table. I was like, I wonder what a D8 looks like.
That's cool. Let me see real quick. I'm
going to roll a D12. All right.
Where is the paper? I had somewhere that I had questions. Here we go. I'm going to show it to the player.
Oh, this is where I get XP potentially, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I didn't do the start of session stuff.
Uh-oh.
Damn it.
What a terrible GM. Ugh. What I have to deal with.
Question 1. Did you undertake a heroic challenge this session? If so, gain 1 XP.
I don't know that I really did I?
Was breaking bad news compassionately to the father? It was a challenge. Was it heroic? Was it a challenge based on who Column is?
I don't know.
I would say it was probably not a heroic challenge. I do think we get to number 2, though. Did you succeed gloriously or fail spectacularly? Didn't really give you a chance to. Or did we learn something interesting about you?
I think we learned interesting things.
Yeah, I think that was good. So you get an XP there. How have your goals, instincts, or beliefs, I spelled beliefs wrong, believes, been reinforced, challenged, or changed? Was there any... And I think, do we have your beliefs marked on your character sheet now?
I don't know if we do. I don't know if we did that.
I've got them on a separate document, but oh yeah, here under notes.
I mean, they were sort of that whole philosophical discussion with Annalie was, I guess, challenging and reinforcing his beliefs.
I think I am pretty comfortable with the idea that you saw her approach from a different direction. Essentially, what you do is magic, and it's almost like no matter what poetry you use to explain it, like what you're doing is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If people go about it religiously, they come up with different dressing on it. Like there might be something like a reinforcement in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what your. Let's read real quick. Beliefs. All things are governed by logic and rules of order, and problems can be solved through logic. Instinct, because of his belief, committed to using logic to determine the best course of action. At times, he becomes distracted or delayed going through different scenarios. I think you played out that well also during the conversation of kind of, even though we hand waved like the long-windedness of it, I think you're sticking to that very well. Discovering the cause of plagues affecting his homeland. I'd say let's keep that as a primary goal, but maybe add between now and the next time we play, think of the goal for foray into the maw. Is the goal as simple as get to the root of the mystery and stop it, or save the wounded dwarf? Like, it doesn't have to be the main goal of the adventure. It could even just be whatever. But come up with a goal that's interesting to you, kind of within the context of each adventure, and of course, the overarching goal stays the same. And then finally, number 4. What are your plans for tomorrow?
Go to Dwarfland.
Go to Dwarfland. So that puts you up to 5 XP, and I think that's level 3.
5 XP? I thought I just got 1.
Oh, you gain 1, but you're at 4 XP.
Oh,
or no. But yeah, you're at 4 XP right now. Let me pull up the rule sheet real quick. Yeah, if you look at the rules handout, the Scarlet Heroes brief rules, at level 3, it's 5 XP. Level 4 is at 9.
And level 3.
And then you have a copy of the PDF, right?
The brief rules?
I don't think the brief rules will have it because it's going to have.
Yeah, I do have it somewhere. Yeah. Yes.
If you need, I can put together a handout that has the level up stuff, but there might be some stuff we can do right now. Effects of gaining a level. The character always gain a sum of additional hit points based on their class, modified by their con modifier.
So I have 0 for my con modifier.
You get 2 hit points plus your con modifier to your max.
So
I'm looking down at magic users. You gain 1/3 of a point to your attack bonus. So now you're up to 2/3, and we always round, so that rounds up to now you get a +1 when you attack.
Cool.
They may also add 1 spell to their spell book from any spell level they're able to cast. Let's see here. I'm going to double check where we are for mages on that. There you go to the spell section.
Oh, my beliefs and stuff are on my character sheet, by the way. I just found it.
So they're under the notes. Magic users, where does it say the spell level? Cash level 3. You've opened up 2nd level spells now.
Oh, cool.
So you can now prepare 2 1st level spells and 1 2nd level spell per day. And I think the spell list, 2nd level spells is a handout that's there on your sheet.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. So you can add a spell to your spell book, and it could be a 2nd level spell. Let's see if there's anything else. You gain 1 additional trait point with each level.
Cool.
And you can add it to an existing trait up to a max of 3, or you can add a new one.
Let's do the small town hero one.
And then if that one's still interesting, I think it could fit for Callum. Or if you wanted something related to coming to know Anna, or we've discovered some stuff about your background. You can always kind of weave in anything we've learned about your character. I think as the Carpenter's Apprentice, you already have like working with wood and stuff, so you wouldn't need to do anything about what we learned about working with that. But
yeah, I mean, I was thinking of something engineering based, but I think small town hero makes sense.
Very cool. Save that.
I'm looking at the second level spells right now.
I haven't even looked at it myself.
They're not great. I'm not gonna lie.
One thing they also recommended was we can look at like a D&D second level spell. They're supposed to be fairly consistent and like what you can accomplish with them. We just would have to look at like how damage is dealt.
Yeah.
Now you also have the choice of not taking magic user as your next level, but you're free to do it. Well, deceitful vision looks interesting.
Yeah, it's basically a illusion spell, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's a very believable illusion unless something tries to like, give pressure or force to it, like strike at it.
Yeah, I think the best two are the first two, honestly. Assuming the Flesh of Mist and the Deceitful Vision.
Golden Morning Grace. Actually appear as another being.
That would be cool for a different character. I don't think it makes sense for this guy.
Oh, and you have like the silver, all the trade stuff. I think when we get back to town, we can do a or when we get back next game, I'll make a note. We can do a roll to see if you'll get like full market price. Generally, you'd get like half the value. I think what we do is for a failure, you would just get half value. But if you get a 9, we'd go up like 10% up to full value of the silver. And that stuff like that, small town hero would work on that.
Got it.
And I think normally charisma, but I could potentially see things like intellect being used if you want to like argue about economy.
I think I will do
Yeah.
the Deceitful Vision as my spell.
I think there's a lot of potential in that one.
I'll have to look and see what I get to memorize each day. Is it 1 second and 2 first? Or 1 second and 1
Yes,
first?
two first and 1 second.
Got it. Cool. Any other level up stuff to?
No, that was it for leveling up. Oh, the 1 point trait that you put in the.
Yep, I got that.
Okay. Looking real quick at the other.
It's going to be hard to shift gears from this guy to Monster of the Week. So
to
different.
Atticus.
So different from Atticus.
I think that's a fun thing I've enjoyed about role playing games, and I used to really look at trying to sink into a character for a long time, like invest in like I want to play this character for a full campaign for as long as I can. I've really come around to a couple of philosophies. One is play your character like a rented car,
Mhm.
like you drive a rented car. Just try and do things that are cool and exciting with them. And then also like when you're in it, really get into it. But I like the idea of short campaigns and playing new characters and always just kind of not getting too invested. In Dungeon World, I ran a campaign where we tried to keep it going for a year. That one that you were briefly part of with Travis and Mike and Josh and all them,
Mhm.
Josh Ramsey. We ended up keeping that one going for about a year. And at some point, like we've done all we want to do with these characters. People were starting to like, well, I'm going to get rid of my character and bring in a different one. And like the campaign just fizzled. And I think I kind of like that idea of the essence of what we're trying to do is really the social experience we're playing together, and the characters of the game system, like all that, I think should be interchangeable. We're going to
Yeah.
get value out of it while we're playing it, but I think it's good to be able to have a satisfying experience. I think we interrupted things Monster of the Week too abruptly. But if we get a satisfying experience with that one and then put it down, do this other one, and then shift back or do something else, or
I think for me the fun of it, obviously the fun of it is getting to hang out with you and anybody else who's playing. But I guess what I've learned from playing games with you is, for me, the fun of it is being authentic to your idea for your character, like letting that put you in some fun and weird and potentially difficult or awkward situations, but at the same time not enjoying the conflict if there is some, enjoying the like, I don't know, like I have embraced the idea of it's fun to have flaws or crappy ability scores or difficulty rather than sort of power game and try to be great at everything. That makes sense.
oh yeah, absolutely.
And I like, it's no fun to be like, well, I'm sorry that that's shitty, but that's what my character would do. Like, that's not the point. But it is fun to be like, oh man, I think I would do this, and that's going to make things tricky. Let's try that. You know what I mean?
I love the design principle of Dungeon World and Monster of the Week, where like, one of the ways you get XP is fail. It encourages you to try shit that's not guaranteed, or even to try shit that probably won't work in your favor.
Well, and it makes sense because you learn from your mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really dig that.
So I don't know. In Monster of the Week, I enjoy that Atticus and Sam are so different, and enjoy and I think Jessica maybe pushes this more than I do because I'm sort of wary of it sometimes based on other experiences that we've had playing games. But like, I enjoy the sort of surprise of one of the characters just being like, well, screw it, I do this. It's like, oh shit, I get to, okay.
When she wandered off in the mountains by herself, like, what?
Yeah, or even to be like, I think one of the things about Atticus is that he is very sort of like arrogant and like cocksure, but also at the same time he's very damaged and thinks of Sam as like a better person than him or a more worthy person than him. So whenever Sam is just like, whatever, you're like, this is what I do. I don't really, like, sort of casts him to the side a little bit in certain circumstances. Like, that's an interesting, it creates interesting under the surface things with him that, I don't know. It's just a cool, interesting mechanic.
You can see that he's almost has this fear of rejection meeting a desire to put himself into a position to be rejected over and over, like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
He's almost like a fatalist in a way, who's at the same time a coward. So,
but also, I mean, thrusts himself into dangerous positions. I still don't know that I have a good sense for why Atticus is willing to be in a position to charge headlong into the danger. He gets in there, and there are things that are potentially dangerous to him. If
there's an analog, and I've realized this since we started playing, but I sort of realized this maybe in the Froghemoth episode or towards the tail end of the Froghemoth episode. If there's a fictional character that I think reminds me a little bit of Atticus, it's Cassidy from the Preacher series.
Okay.
Where he's like sort of loathes himself in a way and throws himself into danger because he has in some ways a really low self-worth, but also is afraid of dying and is kind of a coward, and is also at the same time an arrogant piece of shit. It's like all these sort of incongruities bouncing into each other.
Mm-hmm. God, I never would have pictured Cassidy for him, but I like that. Especially how that all ended up. Cassidy's going to betray Jesus.
I never got into that show, but I've heard it's really good.
I only watched a couple of the first episodes and really liked it. It's quite a bit different. I think you could watch it and like not have the comic book spoil it for you. I liked the Angels. I liked what I saw. I just never got it. I need to buy the DVDs or something.
Yeah, I heard that in the second season is when it really starts to track with the comics. Like the first season
Okay.
is almost a prequel to the comics.
Yeah, very much. They had some very significant differences between the comics and that, but I thought they were good. I thought their uh, what embodiment of the characters was good and interesting. I thought the actress that played Tulip, even though they didn't stick to the race and background of the character, um, Ruth, I think her name was fantastic as Tulip.
Yeah.
I thought it
Yeah.
was really a good play. I like the pick for Custer. I don't know who he was.
Yeah.
And then the guy who played Cassidy, I know him from a few other shows, and he's just fantastic.
The guy who plays Custer is in, I think he's in some of the Marvel movies. I think he's Tony Stark's dad. Like in the original Captain America movie, when it's set in the 40s or whatever, I guess the 30s, 40s.
Bill Howard Stark.
Howard Stark,
Yeah.
I think that's him.
Huh. I'd have to look at that. But and then I don't know if they did something like my favorite character. I think from that whole universe or story was the Saint of Killers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they pulled him out.
He is in it.
Is it good?
Yeah.
I'd like to see how that's done.
I've seen clips from it, but I haven't watched many episodes. I watched like the first 2 episodes when it first came out, and then I lost track of it. But I've seen a clip on YouTube of it's pretty funny actually. It's Hitler somehow came back from hell and is working in like a Radio Shack basically, or a Best Buy or something, and he incenses all the other staff members to like hate the boss, and he like riles them all up in Hitler style, where he's like getting them all incensed and crazy. And there's a scene with him behind the cash register when nobody's there, and he's like writing his notes of like, Minister of Propaganda is going to be Paul from Electronics. And he's like going through all this stuff, and the Saint of Killers shows up to take him back to hell. It's like, no, I have too much to do still. No, you cannot take me. I won't go back.
That's funny. Riling up a store against the manager.
Right.
As the first brown shirt. The first was a beer hall pushed.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Well, it's getting late for me. I'm about to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah, me too. I got to get to class in the morning.
Oh, well, have a good semester, man.
Yeah. No, I will.
And
tomorrow's just syllabus day. I get to tell them that I'm going to be hard, basically.
Feel free to ask them about the treatment of shoe in the town of Cotton Hill.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. It's going to be a lot of people who want to make America great again in my class. I can tell you already.
Aspiring officers of the law. We're actually in the middle. We're September 18th. We're going to have our big dedication ceremony. We open our regional center for public safety excellence. We're doing a big push for a place where we'll provide continuing education, then the basic peace officer certifications, and the idea is to build better communications between all of our law enforcement down here, and then also start pushing for local PDs. I'm going to stop the broadcast here.